actually seeing things, how they run and stuff like that, compared to sort of half guessing things and asking for feedback and stuff like that. Like, so I think one thing I've learned is not to worry about the small things, and try and get as much feedback from actual doing things, that rather than spending too much time on the planning stage.
That's a great one. And I think no matter how long you've been in business, I think you still come to these realizations, because there are people who are just, as you say, like, you're quite meticulous, or there's some people that are planners and they plan everything to a T, but until you actually experience it and see firsthand the way that things work, you can't really, it's almost like you have to experience it to learn from it, and then from there you sort of figure out how you want things to progress. So I think that's a great one for your first year in business, and also a year like this where everything's just been a total upheaval for people.
I guess a lot of time was, I think planning is important still, and a lot of time spent like getting the business plan put together, but then that kind of gets thrown out the window with the year that we've had. So yeah, I think that's probably a big takeaway I've had from this year. I think I kind of in my mind thought, if I can get everything like perfect for day one, then that would be what I was trying to do. But obviously, it just doesn't work like that at all. So I think, yeah, if I could do it again, I'd probably try and get started a bit quicker, and try and learn from doing more than planning.
Yeah, and I think it's probably like a middle ground is the right place to go. Like, I know what you mean, where if you're waiting for everything to get perfect, it just takes ages. And then some people don't ever feel like they get it to where they want to go, and then they never launch their business because they're like, oh, it's not good enough. But a lot of the time, I know with myself, I've kind of learned over the years that if I have an idea and I'm excited about it, yeah, I want to plan it out a little bit, but not to always aim for perfection, because done is always better than perfect. So I think that's a good lesson to learn. And it's harder for somebody who is quite meticulous or a planner. For me, I'm like a leap before I look type person. I'm just like, right, I want to do this, I'm going to go with it. So probably somewhere in between the two is like the happy medium. But this is definitely a year for learning from that.
Yeah, and I think from the pop-ups of being able to set up, you just sort of realize that I'm setting up this business to work for them. So getting their feedback is a lot more useful than me sort of second guessing as well. So I think as well that's sort of been a bit of a blessing from 2020, is even though I had sort of pop-ups planned, I think it's probably gone a bit slower than it would have originally, but I've been able to be quite hands-on with every pop-up, and yeah, like I said, get a lot of feedback from each person, so I can use that to make things better as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I think when I set out setting up this business, I kind of had it in my head that I knew exactly what small business owners needed. I was like, right, there's a hole in the market working specifically with small businesses. I think they need this. But as time goes on, you realize that you might have been wrong about that, or you might have been right in some cases, but you completely missed all of these people over here. And I think that feedback from your actual clients, as you say, like the people that are actually using your service or using your space, that's really the only way you can know. Otherwise, you're just making assumptions which may or may not be correct. So it's kind of interesting how you really can't figure this stuff out until you just start.
Yeah, yes, definitely. And especially with some of the feedback I was getting before I launched the business, a lot of these people in these businesses have had to completely adapt. So their way of thinking about either doing pop-ups or having a venue to host pop-ups this time last year has had to be switched on its head because of what's happened. So yeah, I guess like everybody's become more adaptable, more resilient because of this year.
Oh, definitely. And how are you feeling now about 2021? Like, are you feeling quite encouraged? Are you feeling a little bit worried about it? What are your kind of thoughts moving out of 2020?
Um, Mostly encouraged. I think, yeah, I think we'll have to wait and see how the first few months of it go. But I think, I'm still quite hopeful that going into spring, summertime, that we'll be able to have things a bit more normal. So that it's quite funny because some of the pop-ups we've had, it's been more um, people worrying about lots of people gathering at their pop-ups, whereas like in previous years that would have been like the perfect scenario for them. So hopefully we can have it so that you don't have to think about people gathering at pop-ups or like putting in social distancing measures quite as much. So I mean, I'm mostly encouraged about next year, but I'm still, I guess, cautiously optimistic, I guess.
That's a good way to put it. But you know, what's interesting about your business is that you might actually find you get a lot of people who used to have their own premises or who maybe had thought they would be getting their own premises, but now are a little bit hesitant because of what's happened and thinking like, do I really want to commit to that? So you're basically creating an opportunity for people that either had premises and it's no longer viable or are a little bit worried about committing to it and giving them a chance to kind of give it a go and try their hand at having a shop or doing something different for a holiday or a certain time of year or whatever. That's an opportunity that a lot of people possibly hadn't thought of before, and now that's just perfect for anyone who's a little bit unsure about committing to a full a lease of a shop.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely right. I think you've got the two types of people that I'm coming across there. It's people who are starting their own business, and a lot of people have started their own business out of 2020 as well, and maybe not being certain about committing to like a 5-year lease or whatever, and wanting to test out different locations or seasonal sort of stuff as well. And there's people who are maybe trying to mix their like online business with still having like a physical presence every now and again. So that's the two types of businesses I'm coming across that they're sort of looking for that sort of thing.
Well, some of us realize that we can tweak our services a little bit to better suit our audience. There were other people who did a complete pivot. Yes, I know that is the most used word of 2020, but some businesses really did find a totally different focus. When they saw a hole in the market or when they saw their audience needing a new service to become available. And Laurie McPherson is one of those people. Laurie before did larger scale training for businesses, and when lockdown hit and she saw a lot of people losing their jobs and really struggling to figure out what to do next, she decided to fill a hole in the market. The focus of Laurie's business is now on career coaching under the name Your Fairy Job Mother. Hey Laurie, how are you managing over there?
I'm good, yeah, all good here. Just started getting back into it, working on some CVs today and some applications, and just settling back in after the new year.
Cool. Well, speaking of the new year, I think for a lot of us, we were glad to see the end of 2020, even though obviously this year has started out a little bit less desirable than we were hoping. I think it's fair to say. But thinking back to 2020, is there anything that stands out in your mind? Any lesson that you learned that you can kind of carry forward now that we move into the new year?
Yeah, so definitely for me, it's about getting a better balance this year. I was one of those folk who pivoted the business because I had to, because my sort of training side kind of went overnight. So I focused on the career side, on helping people work out what they want to do and how to get there. But both in the absence of anything else to do, because there was nothing else we could do, and to keep me going, I worked too much. And so my words for 2021 is balance. Now, I am very aware that saying this right now to someone who might be struggling with homeschooling, etc., is not maybe going to be what people want to hear, but I am loving it already. Today I'm working till 9. I'm on a networking tonight, so I started at 1. And yesterday I started networking at 7, so I was done by 3. So I've had the yoga mat out, I have disastrously cut my own hair, I've been looking at other things, I've finished a couple of books, and it was exactly what I needed after working too much. So that's what I'm taking forward: balance, boundaries, and I don't need to be available 24/7.
You know, it's funny you say that, because for me, one of the reasons that I wanted to run my own business instead of working for somebody else was that I wanted that flexibility, that if I was having a day where I was working late, I could take the morning off, as you just said there, or even, if you wake up and you're having a bit of a down day, or a day where you're not feeling overly motivated or whatever, you can decide to then take that day off or take a few hours off, go for a long walk and come back to it. But for some reason, at the same time, then we start our own businesses and we think we have to work 24/7, and that people expect us to work 24/7 and answer their email at 11 o'clock at night and all these things. So I'm glad that taking a pause, I guess, kind of brought you back to a place going, actually, I don't need to be doing that, and I don't want to be doing that, and finding a better balance.
Yeah, absolutely. No one needs to be doing it. It's just, as I say, partly if I had been able to go and have my normal social life, I wouldn't have contemplated it because I'd have been too busy. But because that wasn't there, I thought, I'll just work. And, it worked in a way. I got plenty of work, but it isn't good for me. And at times I felt really stressed. And like you, I started my own business so I could do what I wanted. So... But we then don't, because we're too busy working. So it's a crazy setup. So now I think I'm going into year 3 next month as well. So that's part of the difference. It's like I've done a little bit of this. Last year was about massive visibility, constant networking. I feel now like I'm not finished for that, not at all. But I feel like I've done a lot of work on that, and now it's time to kind of choose the work that I want.
I think this is a realization that many of us have come to this year, and maybe it's more of a reminder that one of the biggest perks of starting a small business and becoming self-employed is that you get to call the shots, you get to make the decisions about how much and when you work and how flexible those working hours can be. My final guest for part 1 of this episode has also realized that very thing during her time in lockdown, and she says that a lot of others in her industry have expressed similar sentiments. So next up I have Adele, who happens to run my favourite neighbourhood cafe just around the corner from me in Finniston, called Willow Grove, and Adele talks us through what this year has meant for her and what lessons she has already implemented and plans to continue carrying forward into this new year. Hey Adele, how are you feeling now that we are almost at the end of 2020?
Well, knackered, but I feel like everyone else, you just need to power through and get on with it, and we're nearly there, so there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
I think that's the thing, like, so many people set out at this year and had all these goals in mind, and now at the end of it, everyone's kind of like, well, we've made it through and we still have a business, so...
Oh my God, yeah, totally.
That's an achievement in itself.
I think whether you're in business or not this year, everyone was like, 2020, it's the year to be amazing, and nah.
No, maybe 2021.
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
So, obviously, we've all kind of learned a lot this year about running a business, about how quickly things can change, and what to do if things don't go to plan. But if you had to pick sort of one lesson that you've learned this year that you're going to kind of carry forward into the future, what would yours be?
I actually think my lesson is that the more time I take for myself and like take a wee step back, it actually works better for the business and for me personally. Like when I'm pretty sure most people in hospitality were knackered before the first lockdown, and I remember when she said, "That's it, you have to close," I was relieved by the end of that week, because I've heard this from like my friends that are in hospitality, because everyone was exhausted. And I feel like that gave me time to stop and think and rejig a few things and actually realise that I don't need to work quite as hard to have not pay out money wise, but pay out life wise, like spend more time with my partner and my family and friends, and yeah, so I feel like I'm going to carry that on. We shut on a Sunday now. We always work 7 days a week.